This is Kite Cutter TV with another presentation. We gotta talk about this. Okay guys, 29 men and a woman making a total of 30 people were found inside a Southwest Houston home held hostage in just their underwear. One of the victims managed to escape running down the street with barely any clothes calling for help. Police responded, breaking open what appears to be an apparent human smuggling operation. Someone called 911 when they heard a man calling for help, and when the police arrived, he led them back to the house he'd escaped from. Police are now investigating this as an apparent human smuggling operation. They say the victims, all from different Latin American countries, including Honduras, El Salvador, Mexico, and Cuba, had been picked up in Brownsville and held in the Houston home for days, some nearly a week. Police said one of the victims told them he'd been promised a job in Houston, but that all changed when he arrived. All of the illegal immigrants were moved out of the cold and into a nearby school gym before immigration services picked them up. It seems like at least some, if not all of them, were immediately deported. Check this out.
Back to that developing story that we've been following for you since we first broke it last night at 10 o'clock.
We are getting a first look at surveillance video right here where more than 24 people were rescued from what police described as a human smuggling operation. Good morning and thank you for joining us. I'm Lisa Hernandez.
And I'm Andy Sirota. That stash house was found off Copper Ridge Lane and Raven Ridge. Police responded after a man in his underwear ran down the street yelling he'd been kidnapped. Channel 2's Vincent Crivelli joining us now live from Southwest Houston. Vince, you spoke to the woman looking for her cousin, right?
Andy, that's exactly right. The woman that I spoke with says her cousin had been missing for over 2 months. She thought he was amongst the victims here yesterday, and today she found out she was right.
Take a look at the surveillance video. Cameras were rolling when a nearly naked man went running through this neighborhood screaming he'd been kidnapped.
We got a call about a male running down the street in his underwear.
Investigators forced their way inside the home he escaped from. Inside, they found 29 men and one woman. The incident caused a commotion. Many neighbors looked on, and so did Andrea Baquedano.
I hope that God has saved him, and that's why I came all the way over here.
She's talking about her cousin. She says her family paid $11,000 to get him smuggled across the border, but then a Mexican gang abducted him and demanded $3,000.
You don't know, like, if they getting threatened or they getting hit.
Investigators say the 30 victims were forced to stay in their underwear and the house was locked up. If you look closely, you can see there's plywood covering the windows.
Several of them told us that they had been held against their will between 2 days and a week that they'd been in the house.
Authorities say last night the victims were in custody of immigration, but today Andrea is all smiles.
My cousin called me from Mexico telling me that he was in the scene yesterday and he was sent back.
Sent back to Mexico, but still breathing. She says the kidnapping experience was traumatic, and now he plans to go back to Honduras.
I don't care about the money. I just care that he's alive.
And detectives say 3 people have been detained in relation to this human smuggling operation. Reporting live in Southwest Houston, Vincent Crivelli, KPRC, Channel 2 News.
We want to begin with breaking news from around Texas. Nearly 30 people were rescued from what police are calling a human smuggling ring in Southwest Houston. At about 9 last night, police responded to reports of a man running down the street in his underwear yelling that he'd been kidnapped along with several others and was being held captive at a nearby home. There, police found at least 25 men and one woman, all of them also undressed. 3 people were detained, but police say it's still not clear whether they are suspects.
Well, I think what the suspects did is they undressed and they hid among the other people. And so we pulled out the ones that looked clean, that still had their jewelry. Most people were dirty and they didn't have jewelry on. These few people did.
Police say the victims were picked up in Brownsville, many of them from Honduras, Mexico, and Cuba. Some had been in the house for up to a week.
We're learning more this afternoon about the alleged human smuggling operation busted in Southwest Houston. Nearly 30 people were rescued from inside a house near Ridgemont Elementary last night. And today, more about what led to the rescue of the victims and families who have been looking for loved ones. David Gonzalez has the latest.
Caught on camera. The moments just before the nightmare inside an alleged stash house in Houston comes to an end. Houston police arriving at a home on Raven Ridge Drive after a hostage escaped.
When he ran up to me, he was all cut up. He had like cuts in his face, but he was in his red shorts and drawers, and he's barefooted.
Mary Lewis lives directly behind the house. Lewis believes the man jumped her gate to get away from the home. She says she was in her front yard when the man ran up to her.
And then I was backing up. I said, "What's wrong, man?" I said, "I can't understand you. What are you talking about?" And then he was looking back that way.
Lewis says the man then ran to another home for help. Inside the Raven Ridge home, HPD found 29 men and a woman held hostage by alleged human smugglers.
And I don't know, I just had a feeling that he was in that group.
Andrea Baquedano's cousin was among them.
And he said he was in there on the house and that the police got them.
Her cousin was trying to get to the U.S. from Honduras, but she hadn't heard from him in 2 months.
I was worried because one of the men that they used to call us, he said, "You know what? Your cousin is missing. He probably might be dead."
She knew her cousin was in trouble.
Every time they call us, they say, "Okay, you want to know about him? Give us $3,000.
She's now relieved all the victims are safe. David Gonzalez, KHOU 11 News.
A man running and yelling in his underwear leads to the discovery of a human stash house in Houston. It happened last night in a neighborhood in the city's southwest side. The man led officers to a home where they found 25 men and a female. Police say the female may be a minor. Investigators are calling it a smuggling operation. The victims told officers they were picked up in Brownsville and that there were more, but some escaped.
They found approximately 30 people inside, as 29 males and 1 female. That most of them were just in their underwear as well. They were able to take them out of the house, and several of them told us that they had been held against their will between 2 days and a week that they'd been in the house. The school was nice enough to open up. We take them inside, help them find some clothes. We also got some food for them and had the fire department check them out. We detained 3 people that we believe might be possible suspects that were holding them against their will, but that's still being determined. The Immigration, the Department of Homeland Security is here to conduct. They're going to take over the investigation on this.
Do we know where? This week, President-elect Joe Biden is expected to announce more transition moves, including more appointments, but he'll have to wait until January 20th to start officially enacting policies. Our political expert, Joe St. George, is looking into what he'll change with immigration and what he'll struggle to do on his own.
They are some of the most controversial actions President Trump took over the last 4 years. Immigration reform, building the wall, ending DACA, refugee restrictions. So what could President-elect Biden change? Well, executive orders will be issued, likely on day 1, to reinstate DACA protections, which would keep 650,000 plus immigrants who came to the U.S. as children in the United States. Biden will also stop the prohibition of foreigners entering the U.S. from several Muslim-majority countries. Not to mention, Biden is expected to allow more refugees and will stop directing funds to build more of the border wall.
Now, President-elect Joe Biden will be able to change some of President Trump's immigration policies with a stroke of the pen. It'll change right away, but others will take time. Perhaps even years.
What will President-elect Biden struggle to change? Well, he won't be able to take down the 400 plus miles of border wall President Trump built. It'll also be difficult for him to instruct 20,000 plus asylum seekers living in Mexico awaiting court hearings to suddenly enter the United States. Biden will also struggle to end privately run detention centers because of contracts. The president-elect will also need Congress to pass any true immigration reform, which would make it easier for those outside the United States to become citizens. Many of Biden's critics in the U.S. Senate will caution the most important thing that must be protected is the border. Remember, 2 runoff elections in Georgia in January will determine control of the Senate and the future of what immigration bills may get passed into law. In Washington, I'm Joe St. George.
Thanks for watching. Like, share, and subscribe. Till next time, God bless. Peace.